who will now be selling into our home market, the USA, because nobody is going to be able to compete with you.
Welcome to today's video. As the title suggests, we're witnessing a major turning point in U.S. trade policy, and it's driving the American agricultural industry into crisis. While the Trump administration implemented tough trade strategies, particularly with China, one of the hardest-hit industries is soybean exports. The sharp decline in soybean exports is not only putting immense financial pressure on American farmers, but also pushing thousands into bankruptcy, with the trade war becoming a double-edged sword. What do you think about this impact? Do you believe Trump's trade policy is truly harming American farmers? If you agree, leave a 1 in the comments. If not, comment 0. Enjoy the video and don't forget to like, share, and hit the subscribe button to support us. Now let's dive into the details of this story. Soybeans, once hailed as America's green gold, symbolize the success of the U.S. agricultural sector, contributing significantly to the economy and creating millions of jobs in rural areas. However, in recent years, especially after the U.S.-China trade war began, soybeans have faced a major shock, not only in terms of production but also in trade value. This has impacted American farmers and raised many questions about trade strategies and the economy's dependence on international partners. China, the largest importer of U.S. soybeans, has significantly reduced its orders amid escalating tariff retaliation. Previously, China spent about $3 billion every quarter buying soybeans from the U.S., but that figure nearly dropped to 0 in 2024. This has posed a significant challenge for rural economies, where soybeans play a crucial role. Many farmers are not only incurring losses during harvests, but also facing the risk of bankruptcy, as there is no stable market for their products. According to the U.S. Soybean Association, U.S. soybean exports have sharply declined, not only due to tariffs, but also because major trade partners have shifted toward other countries like Brazil and Argentina. These countries quickly seized the opportunity to ramp up production and offset the supply shortage from the U.S. This has reduced the export value for the U.S. and pushed farmers into difficult situations, forcing them to reconsider business strategies and seek new markets. One important lesson from the U.S.-China trade war is the risk of over-reliance on a single market. China's reduction in soybean imports highlights the fragility of global supply chains and the instability that arises when major nations unexpectedly change trade policies. This underscores the importance of market diversification and not relying solely on one partner. Moreover, this trade war demonstrates the powerful impact of tariff policies on export industries. While the goal of these measures was to reduce trade deficits and protect the domestic economy, the real-world consequences have harmed U.S. businesses and farmers, who are directly bearing the higher costs and reduced product demand. American farmers, particularly those growing soybeans, are facing unprecedented challenges. Not only have soybean prices plummeted, but production costs have also risen. This has created a vicious cycle, making it impossible for many to continue their operations. Meanwhile, government support policies have not been strong enough to offset the losses they are enduring. Some farmers have been forced into bankruptcy or to sell their land, creating a major shock for rural economies, where agriculture has always been dominant. However, this shift has also made many realize that in today's globalized world, American farmers need to find long-term solutions to survive and thrive. The adoption of new technologies, improving production processes, and seeking new export markets could be crucial in sustaining the U.S. agricultural sector. Despite the challenges posed by the trade war, new opportunities have emerged for U.S. farmers and agricultural industries. China's reduction in soybean imports from the U.S. has opened the door for other countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Southeast Asian nations to increase production and exports. However, this has also led these nations into fierce competition to improve both production and product quality. For the U.S., if it can overcome the challenges from the trade war, this could be an opportunity for growth and to seek new trade partners. Diversifying export strategies, coupled with improving product quality, will be key in helping American farmers and agricultural businesses maintain their position in international markets. One thing policymakers need to keep in mind is building a sustainable and flexible trade system, not just focusing on short-term growth, but also considering the long-term impacts on the economy and export industries. Tariff policies and retaliatory measures should be carefully assessed to ensure they do not harm the country's core industries like agriculture. Building fair trade agreements and creating a stable environment will help U.S. farmers and businesses avoid being affected by fluctuations from foreign partners. At the same time, government support in technological innovation and encouraging sustainable production will be crucial for the long-term growth of the U.S. agricultural sector. Amid the trade war and the sharp decline in agricultural export values, American farmers, especially soybean producers, are facing an unprecedented financial crisis. This crisis not only causes significant financial losses, but also creates instability in rural communities, pushing thousands of families to the brink of bankruptcy. The decline in soybean exports, a key crop in American agriculture, particularly after China drastically reduced its orders, has led many farmers into dire circumstances. High tariffs and volatility in trade policies have drastically reduced soybean prices, preventing farmers from making a profit on their harvests. Many are facing the problem of having no stable market for their products, leading to enormous losses. The story of Caleb Ragland, president of the American Soybean Association, is a prime example of this situation. As the leader of an important organization, Caleb has witnessed massive losses in the soybean industry, causing many farmers to nearly go bankrupt. Along with unstable policies, farmers are not only facing financial issues, but also struggling with a lack of resources to maintain their operations. The situation is exacerbated as production costs rise while revenue remains stagnant. Input costs for materials, supplies, fuel, and labor are at high levels, yet the selling prices of agricultural products are insufficient to cover these expenses. This forces farmers into a difficult position where they cannot continue production without financial support from the government or long-term loans. With production not meeting expectations and the market shrinking, the losses of farmers are becoming staggering. Rural communities are clearly feeling this pressure, with many farmers having to sell their land or cut down on labor to reduce costs. This is a troubling situation, where many families are not only losing their assets, but also face the risk of not being able to continue their agricultural work, a profession that has been their livelihood for centuries. This financial crisis is not only affecting farmers, but is also creating significant instability in rural communities. Thousands of jobs in these areas could be lost, and local infrastructure such as processing plants and retail stores is also heavily impacted. When farmers can no longer produce, the supply chain and rural economy will be disrupted, creating a ripple effect across other industries. This is especially evident in traditional rural communities where agriculture is the primary industry. When farmers can no longer sustain their operations, a range of social problems will emerge, including rising unemployment rates, mental stress, and a loss of trust in government policies. With the situation worsening, it is time for policymakers and agricultural support organizations to reassess the financial crisis facing rural communities. Short-term solutions, such as emergency financial aid, need to be implemented to help farmers weather this storm. However, more importantly, a long-term strategy is needed to ensure stability and growth for the agricultural sector, reduce reliance on a single market, and help farmers explore new opportunities. At the same time, the government should consider policies to protect the value of agricultural exports and restore trade relations with strategic partners to ensure stability in the supply chain and market access for American agricultural products. The soybean crisis in the U.S. has raised significant questions about the effectiveness of the subsidy measures implemented by the government. While financial relief packages were rolled out to support farmers, many are beginning to question whether these subsidies are enough to address the difficulties the U.S. agricultural industry is facing. This issue is not only a problem for a group of farmers, but also reflects broader disruptions within the national economy and politics. Through financial subsidies, the U.S. government has tried to alleviate some of the damage that soybean farmers have faced after China significantly reduced its soybean imports. However, while these relief packages have provided temporary assistance, they do not offer a comprehensive solution. Subsidies cannot replace a large export market like China, which was once the primary consumer of U.S. soybeans. The decline in orders from China has caused the value of soybeans to plummet, leaving farmers unable to recover their substantial losses. One of the biggest consequences of relying solely on subsidies is the threat to rural economies. Subsidy measures only provide short-term relief and do not create long-term changes in the structure of U.S. agriculture. While these subsidies temporarily reduce financial pressure, they cannot replace a stable and sustainable export market. This means that unless the government finds new solutions to restore international markets, U.S. farmers will continue to face similar crises in the future. The soybean crisis has not only impacted farmers directly involved in soybean cultivation, but also has far-reaching consequences for the entire U.S. economy. Agriculture in general, and soybeans in particular, are critical industries for the rural economy, generating millions of jobs. The loss of a significant portion of the export market has caused major volatility, affecting the income of millions of people and reducing public confidence in the economy's ability to recover. This has also amplified political polarization. Debates over whether to increase subsidies or seek alternative solutions in trade policies have become more intense. Some analysts argue that subsidies only create a temporary escape without addressing structural problems. Meanwhile, others believe the government should focus on rebuilding export markets rather than continuing to rely on subsidies to resolve the crisis. An important lesson from the soybean crisis is that over-reliance on financial subsidies will not solve the underlying issues of the economy. To ensure sustainable growth, long-term policies are needed to revive export markets, build new economic opportunities, and reduce dependence on short-term financial support measures. The government needs to carefully balance maintaining subsidies with finding long-term solutions to revive and grow the U.S. agricultural sector. Furthermore, agricultural businesses themselves need to become more self-reliant in seeking and developing new markets. Instead of relying on one or a few major partners, agricultural producers should diversify their consumer markets, seek export opportunities to other countries, and build more flexible business models. This will help minimize risks when large markets alter policies or face disruptions. The soybean crisis and the government's subsidy measures raise many questions about the long-term sustainability of U.S. agriculture. Can subsidies truly solve the issue, or do we need other strategic solutions to restore and develop export markets? If you agree with this viewpoint, leave a comment with the number 1. If you disagree, comment with the number 0. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a subscription to support us. Now let's continue to follow the developments in this video. The trade war between the U.S. and China has lasted for quite some time, but one of its most significant impacts has been the shift in the soybean market from the U.S. to South America, particularly Brazil and Argentina. This not only erodes the U.S.'s position in international markets, but also severely impacts American agriculture, especially for soybean farmers. Brazil and Argentina, 2 countries in South America, have emerged as the winners in this trade war. China's retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. have caused American soybeans to lose a significant share of the market in China. Meanwhile, Brazil and Argentina have seized this opportunity to increase their soybean exports to China, dominating a market that was once dominated by the U.S. Data from international agricultural organizations shows that China has significantly increased soybean imports from Brazil and Argentina in 2024, while imports from the U.S. have decreased sharply. The question arises, why has China shifted its imports, and what does this mean for American agriculture? There are several reasons why China has decided to shift its soybean imports from the U.S. to South America. One of the main reasons is tariffs. As the U.S. and China engaged in a trade war, China imposed high tariffs on American soybeans to retaliate against U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods. This made U.S. soybeans more expensive and less competitive in the Chinese market. In contrast, Brazil and Argentina not only have the advantage of competitive pricing, but are also geographically closer to China, which helps reduce shipping costs and improve supply chain speed. These South American countries have invested heavily in agriculture, applied new technologies to boost yields, and strengthened trade relationships with China. This shift has profound negative consequences for U.S. agriculture, particularly for soybean farmers. China was previously one of the largest export markets for U.S. soybeans. Losing this market share has caused soybean prices to plummet, creating financial difficulties for American farmers. Many farmers are unable to maintain profitability and are facing the risk of bankruptcy. Additionally, the loss of the market also affects the entire agricultural supply chain in the U.S., from processing plants to shipping and export companies. Without a stable market to sell their products, U.S. agriculture becomes unsustainable in the long run. The U.S. government and agricultural organizations are working hard to find solutions to restore market share in China and other international markets. However, replacing a large market like China is not easy. Financial subsidies for farmers provide only temporary relief and cannot address the deep structural issues within U.S. agriculture. Some U.S. farmers are looking for alternative markets, but developing these markets requires time and long-term strategies. Additionally, advancing agricultural technology and improving productivity must be prioritized to reduce production costs and increase competitiveness. The shift in the soybean market to South America serves as an important reminder of the vulnerability of the U.S. agricultural economy when it depends too heavily on a single market. It is also a lesson about building a sustainable agricultural sector and diversifying export markets. Both the government and American farmers need to actively seek new opportunities and reduce risks from international market fluctuations. Developing new markets and enhancing the competitiveness of U.S. agriculture will be crucial for sustainable growth in the future. It is important not only to address immediate issues, but also to build a more flexible and diversified agricultural system that can better withstand future economic and trade shocks. The trade war with China and the loss of the soybean export market is not just a simple issue for farmers, but has far-reaching consequences for the U.S. economy. Losing a crucial crop like soybeans not only affects agricultural production, but also erodes a powerful diplomatic tool for the U.S. Soybeans had previously played an important role in trade agreements and were part of the U.S.'s foreign strategy, helping maintain economic relationships with many countries. With annual export values in the billions of dollars, soybeans are not just a consumer product, but also a significant diplomatic instrument. Trade agreements with countries such as China, Japan, and others created favorable opportunities for the U.S. to promote its economic relationships. However, losing the Chinese market has left the U.S. struggling to maintain its trade and political strength. When American soybeans are no longer the preferred choice for major nations like China, this loss has diminished the U.S.'s international standing. These trade wars have not only reduced America's stature in the eyes of partner nations, but have also raised questions about its ability to maintain economic power and influence in the long run. Beyond agriculture, the decline in soybean exports also impacts other sectors such as transportation, storage, and food processing. As soybean production decreases, food processing plants face a shortage of raw materials, disrupting supply chains. This reduces the efficiency of food processing and transportation industries, causing many companies to cut production, reduce staff, or even close down. In the transportation industry, the drop in soybean export demand has reduced the volume of goods needing transport, directly affecting shipping, trucking, and rail companies. This has led to lower revenues and higher operational costs for transportation firms. These industries, already struggling with challenges such as fuel costs and strict environmental regulations, now face even more difficulties in staying afloat. The decline in soybean exports and the ripple effects across other industries is a clear warning sign of America's weakening role as the global economic leader. If the U.S. cannot quickly recover its export markets and improve competitiveness in agriculture and industry, its position in the global economy will be at risk. The U.S. has long been seen as a symbol of economic power and a leader in international trade issues. However, with the current challenges, the U.S. must adopt a stronger and more flexible strategy to maintain this position. This includes restructuring the economy, seeking new export markets, and investing in advanced agricultural technologies to mitigate the impact of trade fluctuations. As American agriculture, particularly the soybean sector, faces profound difficulties due to the trade war and declining exports, a critical question arises. Can U.S. farmers recover and rebuild their trust in global markets? This crisis is not only a major challenge for farmers, but also a complex issue for the U.S. economy, requiring long-term strategies and a shift in approach to international markets. Despite facing heavy losses, U.S. farmers are known for their resilience and strong recovery capacity. However, to recover from this shock, they need more than just financial support. They also require a long-term strategy, a shift in approach, and the diversification of their export markets. In fact, one of the key factors that has helped U.S. farmers maintain stability in the past is their ability to seize opportunities and innovate when faced with challenges. Nevertheless, recovery will not be easy. Farmers need government support to improve agricultural infrastructure, invest in new technologies, and develop more effective strategies for accessing international markets. Rebuilding trust in global markets will require efforts from all parties, including government agencies, agricultural organizations, and the farmers themselves. In the rapidly changing landscape of international trade, the challenges for U.S. agriculture extend beyond restoring old export markets. There is also the issue of fierce competition from other countries. Nations like Brazil and Argentina have seized the opportunity to ramp up their soybean exports to major markets such as China, diminishing the competitiveness of the U.S. in the global agricultural industry. To overcome these challenges, the U.S. must change its agricultural strategy. This includes focusing not only on one or a few export markets, but also developing new markets, investing in advanced agricultural technologies, and creating more sustainable production models. In particular, there's a need to promote environmental protection initiatives and encourage innovation in farming methods to increase productivity and reduce costs. The future of the U.S. economy is not only dependent on the recovery of the agricultural sector, but also on how the nation can maintain its leadership role in the global economy. Can the U.S. regain its position and lead the world economy in the future? This is a question that leaders, policymakers, and American citizens must address. Regaining this position requires a comprehensive strategy, not just in agriculture, but also in other industries. The U.S. needs to develop high-tech, innovative, and sustainable industries to maintain and enhance its global competitiveness. At the same time, it must implement smart trade policies that not only protect national interests, but also create opportunities for U.S. businesses to expand globally. The soybean crisis in the U.S. is not just a major challenge for the agricultural sector, but also has far-reaching effects on the national economy. From the loss of key export markets like China and the decline in soybean prices, to the ripple effects on industries such as transportation, food processing, and international politics, the severity of the issue is evident. In this context, U.S. farmers face an uncertain future, while the government and agricultural organizations must find sustainable solutions to restore the agricultural sector and maintain America's position in the global market. However, this crisis also serves as a warning to all of us about the vulnerability of the economy when too much reliance is placed on a single industry or market. Changing strategies and diversifying export markets are essential to ensure sustainable development. If you find the information in this video helpful and understand the importance of this issue, don't forget to like and share this video so more people can become aware of the soybean crisis and its impact on the U.S. economy. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss future videos on global economic and trade issues, as well as interesting and timely stories we will continue to explore. Thank you for watching the video. We look forward to your feedback in the comments below. Please share your thoughts on this crisis, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them so we can address them in upcoming videos. Thank you and see you next time.